On the charges against U.S. Marine veteran Daniel Penny. Joining me now is New York Law School professor Anna Cominsky. Anna, thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now let's start with the charge. What is second-degree manslaughter?
So second-degree manslaughter is when someone recklessly causes the death of another. So what does that mean? Our law defines that as when someone is aware of and disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk of death. So in this case, the key is that they're saying that the potential defendant here, Mr. Penny, was aware of the risk of death.
Now, how does that differ from first-degree manslaughter or a murder charge?
So the really big difference here, and the difference is with respect to most homicide charges, as the mens rea, or what we refer to as the culpable mental state. So with a murder charge, we're looking at intentional act. There was an intent to cause death, or someone acted with depraved indifference. And so the big difference here is that the prosecutor has decided that there was not an intent to cause death, but that Mr. Penny was aware of and disregarded the risk of death.
Now, the charge came before a grand jury decision. What does that say about this case?
Well, so I think there's a couple of things. First of all, with respect to presenting a case to a grand jury, that is something that takes time. So right now there are grand jurors sitting and they're listening to other cases. They're making decisions about other cases. And so it's not just that they clear the docket and that this case is put right in front of that grand jury. They have to make sure that they convene a grand jury, that those grand jurors are able to listen to all the evidence and then vote. So that's one thing, is that, you know, whether they actually have grand jurors available right at this moment to listen to this case and how long that presentation would take. You can imagine that there would be quite a bit of evidence that the grand jury would have to hear with respect to a case like this. Now, the second thing,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The second thing is, with respect to the presentation to the grand jury, when it's presented to the grand jury, there's an indictment. And sometimes the prosecutor's office will decide that what they'll do is they'll charge with a felony complaint or a criminal complaint. You'll hear people refer to them either way. And that makes it so that there's some time for the defense attorneys and the prosecutors to discuss the case, potentially resolve the case prior to the case being presented to the grand jury. That does not mean that the case will be resolved in this case before being presented to the grand jury, but it is a possibility.
Do you think we could see more charges?
Well, certainly the prosecutor has the ability, when they present to the case to the grand jury, to ask the grand jurors to come back with more than one charge, and the grand jurors have it within their power. In fact, it's their sole power to decide what charges to bring. So that could be one, or it could be multiple charges.
And what is the punishment for second-degree manslaughter?
For a first-time felony offender in this case, it would be 15 years in prison.
What is next in the case after the arraignment?
So after the arraignment, you are most likely going to see whether or not the case is presented to the grand jury. And so one of the things that we'll want to be on the lookout for today is whether or not they're setting the case over for grand jury action for a short date or a longer date, because that's going to tell us how long they think it's going to take to actually present this case to the grand jury. Is
there anything else you think we should know about this case?
I think what's really important for all of us to keep in mind is that although I know, you know, for many people, including the family of the victim in this case, this has felt like a really long time. It's felt like a very long time for this case to actually start. But what's important for us to remember is that this is just the beginning of this case. And so it is on the prosecutor to prove each and every element of this case beyond a reasonable doubt. And a felony complaint alone does not do that.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Anna Cominsky. Stay with CBS 2 for complete coverage of this case as it unfolds. We're going to bring you the very latest live on air and right here on our streaming channel, CBS News New York.